Hello and welcome, open-minded and unchained viewers, as we go through the colored lens in order to view the madness on the other side of the curtain. I am your host, Mystery Enigma, and today we'll be looking at Kendrick versus Drake, the art of battle rap. Now, some people think that Kendrick, in order to win, simply out-rapped Drake, and there is some truth to that. Some think that Kendrick just outsmarted Drake, and there's some truth to that too. Some say Kendrick used the 48 laws of power for his strategy against Drake, but this one, I'm not so sure about. Why? Well, let me explain. As most of the world knows by now, Kendrick Lamar has just had the year of his life. As a man known for using double and triple entendres for the purpose of enhancing our minds and making us think bigger, it only made sense that he would use this battle to teach us something else in triplicate. He showed us how to 1. Dismantle a colonizer, 2. Send a powerful message to the gatekeepers, and 3. Highlight the power of a person backed by the might of the people, the power of unity. He also revealed one more thing, how to use Sun Tzu, the art of war, to get a ninja gone. So some of you might be asking, who is Sun Tzu and what is the art of war? And to that I'd say, good question. The art of war is a rule book created by a man called Sun Tzu, a general and military strategist from ancient China, in order to teach his people the ways of using correct war tactics and strategy. Although it was written in the 5th century, it was so good it is still used to win wars to this day. Not only has it been used in actual war, it's been transferred into sports such as football, basketball, boxing, and even chess. Now, before I get ahead of myself, let me just head back a bit to give a quick summary on how we got here. Kendrick Lamar Duckworth and Aubrey Drake Graham were two very different young men from different parts of the world, different sides of the track, living very different lives, but heading on a trajectory toward each other for a meeting with destiny. Feeling like a cosmic event or a government experiment, these two polar opposites of extremely similar age, a mixed race, tall, light-skinned lyrical miracle from Toronto with access to the genre, but no understanding of it, versus a melanated, short, brown-skinned, lyrically miraculous brother from Compton who had no access to it but breathed the genre, were about to become the pivotal factors in the future choices of the hip-hop music industry that had long been destroying the minds of black people and subverting the thoughts of everyone else. Whilst Kendrick was on the underground circuits relentlessly pushing to get a break, Drake was busy making money in his role as Jimmy Brooks on the CTV drama Degrassi from 2001 to 2008. Earlier in 2006, Drake used his money, burgeoning fame and connections in order to release his debut mixtape, Room for Improvement. His privilege got him noticed and signed to Young Money in June 2009. In 2011, after 25 years in the making, the universe was finally ready. Kendrick performed for the first time in Toronto on June 16th. Later that night at the event, Kendrick met Drake for the first time. Not knowing anything about their differences, they celebrated their similarities. Kendrick believed that Drake was just like him. It wouldn't be too long before he found out he was not. The following month, Kendrick released Section 80 to glowing reviews, and only 7 days later, after Drake heard it, he was asked to join Drake on his upcoming tour. For the next few years, they hung around each other, got to know each other, and collaborated on each other's albums. Although Drake was very happy with this arrangement, Kendrick had been noticing the previously mentioned differences. He felt uncomfortable. Some days later, during a conversation between Champagne Pappy and Kung Fu Kenny, Drake decided he was going to tell Kendrick exactly what was needed to be a successful and intentioned rap artist. What Drake said in this conversation was the final nail in the head for Kendrick, and he knew, right then, that their similarities did not outweigh their differences, and that Drake was, without doubt, the op. He had to get gone. This was the point where Sun Tzu was introduced. When using the art of war, Sun Tzu states that all of his methods have to be understood in order for success to be achieved. What he meant by this is that you don't need to use them all, but you need to understand them all in order to know how and when to apply them effectively. A few of his methods relate to 1. Attacking, both direct and indirect. An example of this would be naming names or sneak dissing. 2. Assessing, defining the strength of yourself and your op. For instance, if he is stronger, what should you do to weaken him? And 3. Energy, its preservation and consumption. Example, use as little energy as possible until more is needed. With this in mind, Kendrick assessed Drake's weaknesses. A. On his song Successful, Drake said, "Diss me, you'll never hear a reply for it." He didn't say he wouldn't reply, he just said you wouldn't hear it, because it wouldn't be obvious. Drake is not a battle rapper and was known for sneak dissing. Drake was also known for being very emotional. He had a need for external validation. Assess Drake's strengths. Drake had far greater resources and support. Considered energy consumption. Due to his assessments, he understood it would take too much energy to immediately attack Drake directly, which could cause a loss. Determined his attack. In order to beat Drake, Kendrick had to continually use surprise and indirect attacks until an opening appeared. Guided by his morals, utilizing Sun Tzu's methods and armed with the information he had about Drake, Kendrick was prepared for his attack. He just had to wait for the right moment. On February 11, 2013, Drake won his first Grammy. He was so happy about this, he drank out of his late-arriving, newly unpacked, and unwashed award. His spirit was up, but his guard was down. Kendrick noticed this as the sign, and on the 12th of August, was found to be a surprise feature with Big Sean and Jay Electronica on the single Control. This attack was not only a surprise, it was also the combination of low energy, indirectness, and the assessments Kendrick had made about Drake. In terms of using Sun Tzu, this opening salvo verse was Kendrick's magnum opus and left Drake barely able to stop himself from crashing out completely. Over the next few months, Drake made multiple appearances on various platforms, using his media training to attempt to deny the rumors that Kendrick's attack, now relabeled the Kendrick's Control verse, had put a dent in the once seemingly untouchable rapper. Although he presented himself as unfazed, he was visibly shaken. Another of Sun Tzu's rules essentially boils down to, if your opponent was strong, once weakened, keep applying pressure until he is finished. Pay attention to this. To that end, on the 15th of October 2013, Kendrick took another shot on a BET cipher. He didn't say his name, but we all knew what had just happened. This time, however, there was a tone of disrespect in the verse, followed by the line, "I'm bulletproof." A clear invitation to Drake to come and squabble. 2 months later, Drake responded in Vibe magazine, use magazine cover PG2. This time, he used the platform to try to heighten his image, while simultaneously pushing Kendrick's down without actually saying that was his intention. He said he realized he was being baited, but didn't need to respond because Michael Jordan doesn't have to prove he can play ball. It was at this point, right here, where Kendrick made either his first major mistake, which led accidentally to one of the greatest victories in musical history, or this is where Kendrick showed us that Kung Fu Kenny was the most diabolical future thinker in all of hip-hop. Sun Tzu emphasized that energy consumption was critical during any battle. If facing a strong opponent, weaken them strategically, using low amounts of energy, until you can destroy them. If facing a weaker opponent, destroy them immediately. Tzu was not an advocate of prolonged battles due to having an army. It costs too much money to feed an army for lengthy periods of time, and it was also demoralizing to the men when staying away from home for too long. Lengthy confrontations can lead to unhappiness, heavy losses, and defeat. When Kendrick had Drake covering up on the ropes, dazed and spiraling, Sun Tzu would probably have advised him to, methodically, hit him with mixed punches to his core, make him stomach that, and use his now sore abs to force him to lower his guard until his face was exposed, finishing him off with a powerful shot rather than a minor one. Instead, Kendrick took his foot off the gas and slowed down, which allowed Drake time to gather himself and recover, stalling Kendrick's win for the next 10 years. If this was an intentional move, it would mean that K-Dot went from a potential checkmate down to check by accidentally sacrificing crucial pieces, but still stumbled upon the moves to get the win. However, this also could have been his plan, a modification of Sun Tzu's plan. As Kendrick did not have a massive army around him which relied on his resources to live, a prolonged battle would not be draining and could actually work in his favor. As mentioned before, one of Drake's strengths came from his support. The main arguments from his supporters were in relation to his accolades, his money, his accomplishments, and his awards. By maintaining a long-term strategy, it allowed Kendrick to catch up and even surpass most of the things Drake's supporters said that Drake was great for. Over the next 10 years, the two rivals traded blows, accolades, and awards. However, while Drake maintained a lead in sales, money, and internet streams, Kendrick was receiving critical acclaim, Grammy Awards, and other prizes outside the scope of Drake's purview. A small example, 2014, the anniversary celebration of the Control verse. 2015, Drake releases Back to Back after winning his battle with Meek Mill. 2016, Kendrick received a Grammy for To Pimp a Butterfly. 2017, Drake got a Top 200 Billboard Album Award. 2018, Kendrick won a Best Album Grammy. He also won the Pulitzer Prize in Music for Damn, the first rapper to win one. 2019, Drake won a Grammy. 2021, Drake won the Artist of the Decade Award. 2023, Kendrick won another Grammy. During this time, although there were some moments, there wasn't much spice in the beef. So I'll use this instance to talk about Michael Jackson. Mr. Duckworth and Mr. Graham both compared themselves to Mr. Jackson. A lot, and technically they were both right, but just like their verses on Poetic Justice in 2012, they were both right for very different reasons. Aubrey was thinking about quantity, money, and sales. Kendrick was thinking about quality, lyrics, and substance, yet another indicator of their perspective differences. Then, in October of 2023, it came, the beef. In October of 2023, Drake and J. Cole dropped First Person Shooter. This track, essentially a flex, was supposed to be a celebration for the big three, Cole, Drake, and Kendrick, but Kendrick declined. Although portraying himself as unafraid and outwardly confident, Drake made sure that he never gave an opening for an attack by not mentioning the big three or openly naming Kendrick during his verses. J. Cole, on the other hand, being the friendly soul that he is, felt that not only should he mention the big three, but he should call them all out by name. Unknown to him, this act of respect would not only be a huge mistake for him, but it would turn into the catalyst of Drake's downfall. As mentioned before, Sun Tzu stated that knowing strengths and weaknesses, your opponents and yours, was crucial to any success. Understanding your rival is obvious, but understanding yourself can be harder, yet can prove to be just as, if not more, beneficial. A knowledge of yourself and your opponent not only provides a greater ability for defense, it presents an even larger means to attack, as you will know where to feint, how your opponent will react, the right techniques to use, then where and when to strike. This understanding played right into Kendrick's hands, as battle rap is essentially a roast containing melody and music. The art to any roast is in finding the weaknesses and the dirtiest dirt about the other person, then shouting it out publicly. In this instance, the person was Drake, one of the messiest people in, and maybe out, of hip-hop. Finding intel on him was like finding air in an oxygen mask. The problem for Drake was that finding info on Kendrick would not work out the same way. Kendrick had grown. He had reflected and learned from his previous attack, so this time he understood exactly what he needed to do. He would use Cole's error to destroy Drake. This time, there would be no letting up. This time, there would be no second chances. If Drake even looked like he was about to stand up, if he even thought about talking back, there would be even worse repercussions in place to shut him back down. Since his primary attack on Control worked so well the first time, he just ran with it again. In March 22nd, 2024, Kendrick featured on Like That with Future and Metro Boomin. Just like the first time with Big Sean and Jay Electronica, he was on the second verse. Just like the first time, he hit with aggression and made it very clear what his intention was without fully expressing it. He called out First Person Shooter. Since he wasn't on the album cover, this was another surprise attack, which used low energy, as he didn't create the track, with implied shots which caught Jay. Cole with strays whilst incorporating the weaknesses of Drake gained through his assessments. another definitive high score for his opening. Sidebar: the following month, J. Cole released 7-Minute Drill from his album Might Delete Later. As foreshadowed, 2 days later, he deleted it. At first, he was criticized heavily for this move, as everybody wanted to see a Kendrick versus Cole battle. But on hindsight, after Drake's destruction, he gained praise for his foresight. 6 days later, on April 13, 2024, the Six God released Push-Ups. This was his magnum opus, and, for me, the best song he had in this war. Although he used his traditional, sassy and effeminate style, he was surprisingly strong, for Drake, and unusually wordy. Taking a page from his opponent, he used double entendres and metaphors in a way we were unaccustomed to hearing from him. Thinking that Kendrick was unable to create tracks quickly, he even repeatedly tempts Dot to drop. He thought he was the smarter of the two rivals, and thought that this taunting, alongside the next part of his plan, would be enough to cause a crash out in K. Dot. Over the past decade, he had continually stated that he was better than everybody, especially K. Dot, but, in his own words, it was time to show and prove. This was his first mistake. He had previously stated that he knew he was being baited, but then, perhaps because he felt he was good enough, maybe because his fans gassed him enough, he decided to answer this collect call from Kung Fu Kenny, who was only happy to hit Drake with the charges. The groundwork had been set, the trap was laid, and Drake stepped right in. Utilizing the same tactics he used to beat Meek Mills, Drake went back-to-back with the tailor-made freestyle, a low-blow AI-generated track featuring the name of Taylor Swift with the voices of Snoop Dogg, himself, and the ultimate disrespect, Tupac Shakur. Knowing how much K. Dot respected Shakur, Snoop, and Swift, this was a good way to derail Kendrick's creation process. Combining his previous method with the AI diss made Aubrey believe this was good enough to win for a second time. A few weeks later, on the 30th April 2024, in another show of war tactics, Kendrick did not allow himself to be forced by his audience or opponents into attacking before he was ready. He made everyone wait so long and said nothing that they speculated on his intentions, even assuming Kendrick had backed out. Another of Tsu's tactics: don't speak or reveal intention unless you have to. Then, randomly, after all of the taunts and speculation, on a Tuesday afternoon, Euphoria dropped. This was an intro Sun Tzu would have been proud of. The art of war teaches to keep the stronger enemy guessing to cause confusion, and Kendrick did this perfectly. Euphoria was a combination of Tsu's ideals. Don't attack until you are ready. Use surprise, remain silent, keep them guessing, assess strengths and weaknesses, don't use too much energy, and one I haven't spoken about, strike decisively. When Kung Fu Kenny released Euphoria, he didn't just use Sun Tzu, he also added himself to the mix. The principles of the art of war are very serious, and whilst Kendrick mostly adhered to these principles, he also included various, highly unexpected forms of humor and his own short man confidence. His strike was instantaneous. Before the track even started, Aubrey found himself being smacked around by the cover art. A triple entendre explained as a double entendre. The second hit also came before the track started, a cryptic backward statement made by Richard Pryor. This was a beautiful touch. Then came the art within the art of war. 6 minutes of total destruction. Not only did he hit Drake's weaknesses, but he used most of the weaknesses that have been stated by other people over the years and compiled them into one song. This was an extremely low-energy, high-reward track that interspersed known truths, known speculations, known comments, and many, many items that Drake had cried about previously. At the end of the song, Kendrick warned that this was light work, and he had more to come if Drake tried to continue on. In a playful show of disrespect, Kendrick sang that, "We don't want to hear you say ninja no more." This was like a soft attack on a severe bruise. People have been saying that they haven't liked the way that Drake uses that word, both as a sign of his blackness, or lack thereof, and his lack of knowledge around being black as he uses the incorrect pronunciation. On May the 3rd, 2024, in a response to himself from the foreshadowing in Euphoria, Kendrick dropped 616 in LA. This track was only about 2 minutes long and was the least rewarding in terms of disses. However, although it was less than expected for us, it was still a good track. Furthermore, in the one verse where he actually did diss Drake, It was filled with more insults than Drake's previous two songs put together, something no one really talks about. Finally, the song brings about the main important pertaining to the use of or the insinuation of the use of spies. We'll get to this later. Not too long after, on the same day, on May the 3rd, 2024, Drake released Family Matters. In this track, Drake is the most obnoxious and openly disgusting as any rapper could be, as he calls Kendrick's fiancée a bitch, makes claims that his son, Kendrick's, isn't his son, and that he is actually the son of Kendrick's long-term friend and general manager, Dave Free. He goes on to state that Whitney should put her hands on her knees and shake her ass for him and Dave Free. This level of disrespect caused the reactors to go wild. However, 52 minutes later, almost like he was a clairvoyant, Kendrick drops Meet the Grams. The likelihood that he could have a song about Drake's family prepared directly after Drake attacked his family on Family Matters is highly unlikely, and leads us back to the aforementioned principle of Sun Tzu's, the use of spies. Tzu was an advocate for spy usage. So much so he put them into multiple categories and specified exactly how each and every one of them worked. When I release the unabridged version of this topic, I will exactly highlight what these are and how they are used. In this case, however, it meant that Kendrick, much like a trapdoor spider, could lay a trap, make it seem like it wasn't a trap, and then slam it shut at exactly the right moment. This is what he did to Drake. By releasing his track 616 in LA, how and when he did, I will explain this in the unabridged version, it allowed Drake to clap back on the same day with his, supposedly, red button track in order to squash it. Aubrey would feel levels of euphoria, pun intended, and maybe even start to celebrate, feeling as he had finally done something correctly. It allowed the reactors to listen to and subsequently work on their uploads for Drake's track, just for Kung Fu Kenny to spring the trap closed before they uploaded, making Kendrick's track more relevant than Drake's, and, by intention, making Drake's track almost irrelevant. To top this off, Kendrick used a Sun Tzu classic move, overpowering force. Tzu spoke about the use of forces when going into battle. Soft force was to be used on strong opponents. Its purpose was to ensure that no energy was wasted in order to limit casualties and avoid any situations that could lead to the direct confrontation against unbeatable ops. Strong force is used to end battles quickly. When fighting a weak or weakened op, assess their vulnerabilities and exploit them with a huge, decisive strike. This was why he released They Not Like Us the following day. Giving Drake no time to breathe, this absolute juggernaut of a track caught Aubrey off guard as he was already spiraling from the uppercut of Meet the Grams. This knockout blow was so decisive, rather than fight oncoming unconsciousness, Drake created his next song, The Heart Part 6, as his Get Our Jail Free card. He was sneak dissing with the name of the track, tried to take credit for Kendrick doing so well in this beef, and used issues that K-Dot mentioned on Mr. Morale as his way of bowing out the beef with grace. It did not work. Although he was beaten, he was still moving. Sun Tzu says that victory should be complete. If your opponent keeps getting up, then you keep swatting him until he stays down. Some people think that Kendrick is beating a dead horse, but what is actually happening is that after years of assimilation and infiltration, the beaten horse has such an entitled ego that it won't accept the truth of its loss, so it keeps trying to hit back. The issue with this is, when used correctly, the art of war shows how to counter hit with destructive blows every time an attack is ordered or issued, turning assaults into paper tissue soft slaps. So while Drake is making little to no progress with the aforementioned paper tissue slap attacks like Wagwan Delayla and his unimpressive and now cancelled Australian arena tour, Kendrick is dropping bombs with GNX and selling out his overly impressive American European stadium tour. Until Drake finally understands that he got buried, Kendrick will have no choice but to keep putting him back in the ground. Full version coming soon.
I'm looking where your eyes